And now, my dear fellow, for what have we come to London? To be present at the election of a Protector, and to give our yea or nay for his shuffling grace of... or for that noisy Ryland? Do you believe, Verney, that I brought you to town for that? No. We will have a Protector of our own. We will set up a candidate and ensure his success. We will nominate Adrian, and do our best to bestow on him the power to which he is entitled by his birth, and which he merits through his virtues. Do not answer. I know all of your objections, and will reply to them in order. First, whether he will or he will not consent to become a great man. Leave the task of persuasion on that point to me. I do not ask you to assist me there. Secondly, whether he ought to exchange his employment of plucking blackberries and nursing wounded partridges in the forest for the command of a nation. My dear Lionel, we are married men, and find employment sufficient in amusing our wives and dancing our children. But Adrian is alone, wifeless, childless, unoccupied. I have long observed him. He pines for want of some interest in life. His heart, exhausted by his early sufferings, reposes like a new-healed limb, and shrinks from all excitement. But his understanding, his charity, his virtues, want a field for exercise and display. We will procure it for him. Besides, is it not a shame that the genius of Adrian should fade from the earth like a flower in an untrod mountain path, fruitless? Do you think nature composed his surpassing machine for no purpose? Believe me, he was destined to be the author of infinite good to his native England. Has she not bestowed on him every gift in prodigality, birth, wealth, talent, goodness? Does not every one love and admire him? And does he not delight singly in such efforts as manifest his love to all? Come, I see that you are already persuaded, and will second me when I propose him tonight in Parliament. You have got up all your arguments in excellent order, I replied, and, if Adrian consent, they are unanswerable. One only condition I would make, that you do nothing without his concurrence. I believe you are in the right, said Raymond. Although I had thought at first to arrange the affair differently. Be it so. I will go instantly to Adrian, and if he inclines to consent, you will not destroy my labour by persuading him to return, and turn squirrel again in Windsor Forest. Idris, you will not act the traitor towards me. Trust me, replied she. I will preserve a strict neutrality. For my part, said I am too well convinced of the worth of our friend, and the rich harvests of benefits that all England would reap from his protectorship, to deprive my countrymen of such a blessing, if he consent to bestow it on them. In the evening Adrian visited us. Do you cabal also against me, said he laughing, and will you make common cause with Raymond, in dragging a poor visionary from the clouds to surround him with the fireworks and blasts of earthly grandeur, instead of heavenly raisonnaires? I thought you knew me better. I do know you better, I replied, than to think that you would be happy in such a situation. But the good you would do to others may be an inducement, since the time is probably arrived when you can put your theories into practice, and you may bring about such reformation and change as will conduce to the perfect system of government which you delight to portray. You speak of an almost forgotten dream, said Adrian, his countenance slightly clouding as he spoke. The visions of my boyhood have long since faded into the light of reality. I know now that I am not a man fitted to govern nations. Sufficient to me, if I keep in wholesome rule the little kingdom of my own mortality. But do you not see, Lionel, the drift of our noble friend? A drift perhaps unknown to himself, but apparent to me. Lord Raymond was never born to be a drone in the hive, and to find content in our pastoral life. He thinks that he ought to be satisfied. He imagines that his present situation precludes the possibility of aggrandizement. He does not therefore, even in his own heart, plan change for himself. But do you not see that, under the idea of exalting me, he is chalking out a new path for himself, a path of action from which he has long wandered? Let us assist him. He, the noble, the warlike, the great in every quality that can adorn the mind and person of man, he is fitted to be the protector of England. That is, if we propose him, he will assuredly be elected, and will find, in the functions of that high office, scope for the towering powers of his mind. Even Perdita will rejoice, Perdita in whom ambition was a covered fire until she married Raymond, which event was for a time the fulfilment of her hopes. Perdita will rejoice in the glory and advancement of her lord, and coyly and prettily not be discontented with her share. In the meantime, we, the wise of the land, will return to our castle, and Cincinnatus like, take to our usual labours, until our friend shall require our presence and assistance here. The more Adrian reasoned upon this scheme, the more feasible it appeared. His own determination never to enter into public life was insurmountable, and the delicacy of his health was a sufficient argument against it. The next step was to induce Raymond to confess his secret wishes for dignity and fame. He entered while we were speaking. The way in which Adrian had received his project for setting him up as a candidate for the protectorship, and his replies, had already awakened in his mind the view of the subject which we were now discussing. His countenance and manner betrayed irresolution and anxiety, but the anxiety arose from a fear that we shall not prosecute, or not succeed in our idea, and his irresolution from a doubt whether we should risk a defeat. A few words from us decided him, and hope and joy sparkled in his eyes. The idea of embarking in a career so congenial to his early habits and cherished wishes made him as before energetic and bold. We discussed his chances, the merits of the other candidates, and the dispositions of the voters. After all, we miscalculated. Raymond had lost much of his popularity, and was deserted by his peculiar partisans. Absence from the busy stage had caused him to be forgotten by the people. His former parliamentary supporters were principally composed of royalists who had been willing to make an idol of him when he appeared as the heir of the earldom of Windsor, but who were indifferent to him when he came forward with no other attributes and distinctions than they conceived to be common to many of themselves. Still he had many friends, admirers of his transcendent talents. His presence in the house, his eloquence, address, and imposing beauty, were calculated to produce an electric effect. Adrian also, notwithstanding his reclusive habits and theories, so adverse to the spirit of party, had many friends, and they were easily induced to vote for a candidate of his selection. The Duke of and Mr. Ryland, Lord Raymond's old antagonist, were the other candidates. The Duke was supported by all the aristocrats of the Republic, who considered him their proper representative. Ryland was the popular candidate. When Lord Raymond was first added to the list, his chance of success appeared small. We retired from the debate which had followed on his nomination. We, his nominators, mortified, he dispirited to excess. Perdita reproached us bitterly. Her expectations had been strongly excited. She had urged nothing against our project; on the contrary, she was evidently pleased by it. But its evident ill success changed the current of her ideas. She felt that, once awakened, Raymond would never return unrepining to Windsor. His habits were unhinged, his restless mind roused from its sleep. Ambition must now be his companion through life, and if he did not succeed in the present attempt, she foresaw that unhappiness and cureless discontent would follow. Perhaps her own disappointment added a sting to her thought and words. She did not spare us, and our own reflections added to our disquietude. It was necessary to follow up our nomination, and to persuade Raymond to present himself to the electors on the following evening. For a long time he was obstinate. He would embark in a balloon. He would sail for a distant quarter of the world, where his name and humiliation were unknown. But this was useless. His attempt was registered, his purpose published to the world. His shame should never be erased from the memories of men. It was as well to fail at least after a struggle, as to fly now at the beginning of his enterprise. From the moment that he adopted this idea he was changed. His depression and anxiety